Imagine walking into a store, picking up a product with a big friendly label that says free, and only finding out months later that it's been quietly charging you rent. Not money at first, attention, time, data, control, and then eventually money too. Most of us love free software, free apps, free tools, free platforms that promise to make life easier with zero cost up front. No credit card, no contract, just download and go. It feels like a win. Like we outsmarted the system. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Free software doesn't mean no one gets paid. It just means you're not the one paying immediately. The bill is deferred, hidden, spread out, sometimes cleverly disguised, sometimes deliberately ignored. And right now, more than ever, that hidden bill is getting larger. Software is everywhere. In your phone, your job, your car, your finances, your relationships. And the moment software becomes essential, free stops being generous and starts being strategic. Because free in technology is rarely a gift. It's an entry point. Free software didn't start as a trick. It started as a belief. In the early days of computing, software was often shared the way scientists shared papers, code moved between universities and labs because the hardware was expensive and the software was almost an afterthought. The value was in access to the machine, not the lines of instructions running on it. When something broke, you fixed it yourself or asked the person down the hall who wrote it. Then personal computers arrived. Software became a product. Boxes, manuals, license keys. You paid once, installed once, and used it until the disk scratched or the computer died. Ownership felt clear. You bought something, and it belonged to you. The word free entered the conversation later. And it meant two very different things. One was philosophical, free as in freedom, software you could inspect, modify, and share. No hidden locks, no invisible rules. This idea powered early open source projects and built much of the internet's backbone quietly without ads or fanfare. The other meaning of free was simpler. Free as in $0. And this version spread much faster. As the internet exploded in the 2000s, companies realized something critical. If you remove the price barrier, growth becomes frictionless. Millions of users can arrive. Before anyone asks how the business works, free software wasn't just kind, it was efficient. At first, the math seemed almost magical. Give the product away, monetize later. Ads, premium upgrades, enterprise plans. Investors were happy as long as the user graph kept going up. And to the right, profit could wait. Then smartphones made software constant, always on, always connected. Apps stopped being tools you used occasionally and became environments you lived inside. Messaging apps replaced phone calls. Navigation apps replaced memory. Cloud tools replaced files. You could actually touch. And somewhere along the way, the relationship flipped. Software was no longer something you owned and used. It was something you depended on. Updates became mandatory. Features quietly disappeared. Terms of service grew longer than most novels. And nobody read them, because opting out meant opting out of modern life. Free software thrived in this environment because it lowered resistance. No payment meant no pause to ask hard questions. What does this app need from me to survive? Who is paying for the servers? What happens if the business model changes? Those questions didn't feel urgent until suddenly they were, because once software becomes infrastructure, free stops being a price. It becomes a strategy, and strategies always have an objective. Here's where the tension really starts, because free software still has bills to pay. Servers cost money, engineers want salaries. Security updates don't write themselves, so if users aren't paying, something else has to. That something else usually comes in three forms: data, attention, lock-in. Let's start with data, because it's the quiet one. Free apps often learn more about you than you realize. Not in a sinister movie villain way, in a slow, bureaucratic way. Clicks, locations, contacts, habits, the time you open the app, the time you close it, what you hesitate on, what you ignore. Each piece feels meaningless on its own. Together, they form a remarkably accurate model of you. That model is valuable. It can be sold. It can be used to target ads. It can be fed back into algorithms that decide what you see next. And the more you rely on the software, the more complete that model becomes. You're not paying money. You're paying in behavioral exhaust. Then there's attention. Free software is optimized to be sticky. Notifications are tuned. Interfaces are polished just enough to keep you scrolling. Features are designed less around usefulness and more around retention. The longer you stay, the more ads you see, or the more likely you are to eventually pay for something. This is where the irony creeps in. The tool that promised to save you time starts consuming it instead. What began as convenience slowly turns into background noise you can't turn off. And finally, lock-in. This is the expensive one. Free tools often make it very easy to start and very hard to leave. Your data is stored in proprietary formats. Your workflow adapts to their quirks. Your team builds habits around a platform. That costs nothing today. Switching later means retraining. migrating, rebuilding. Suddenly, the free option is the most expensive one to replace. This is when the price changes. A feature that used to be included becomes part of a paid tier. Usage limits appear, storage caps shrink, APIs that once worked openly now require subscriptions. Not because the company became evil overnight, but because the free phase did its job. It created dependency, and dependency is leverage. At this point, the user isn't choosing anymore, they're complying, because the cost of leaving feels higher than the cost of staying, even if staying now means paying with money, privacy, or control. The conflict isn't that free software charges later, it's that it waits until you can't easily say no. The turning point comes when the math stops being abstract, because eventually someone does the calculation, not on a spreadsheet, in real life. A small business builds its operations on free tools: email, design, project management, analytics. At first, the costs are zero. The team grows, revenue grows. The software becomes part of the company's nervous system. Then one morning, a polite email arrives. New pricing, new limits. The free plan now includes basic access. Everything else is locked behind a subscription. The monthly fee looks reasonable until you multiply it by the number of employees, and then by 12, and then by the fact that leaving would take months of painful migration. That's when free reveals its true shape. The same thing happens at a personal level, just quieter. Years of photos stored in a free cloud account, messages trapped inside a platform where everyone you know already lives, notes, bookmarks, memories, technically portable, practically stuck. The cost to leave isn't money, it's time, stress, and the risk of losing pieces of your life. And here's the uncomfortable twist. Even when the software stays free forever, it can still be expensive, because the real bill shows up as trade-offs you don't see. Privacy erosion that happens one permission at a time. Creativity nudged into templates, because that's what the tool supports. Decisions shaped by recommendation systems you never asked for. The software doesn't just serve you, it quietly shapes you. This is where hype and reality finally collide. The hype says free software democratizes access. And sometimes it does. The reality is that it also centralizes power. A few platforms end up hosting millions of users because free accelerates adoption faster than trust can catch up. When those platforms change direction, users feel it immediately. A tweak to an algorithm can reshape entire industries. A policy update can break businesses overnight. And because the entry price was zero, there was no negotiation at the start, no contract that gave users leverage later. The climax isn't a dramatic collapse, it's a slow realization. Free didn't remove the cost, it moved it into the future, into places that don't show up on invoices, into dependencies that are invisible until they're absolute. By the time you notice, you're already inside the system, and the exit door is much smaller than the entrance. So what do you do with this information? Not uninstall everything? Not swear off free software? That would be unrealistic and honestly unnecessary. Free tools have built careers, companies, and entire creative movements. The problem isn't free, it's unconscious free. The real takeaway is awareness of where the cost hides. Every time you adopt a free tool, you're making a quiet bet that the rules won't change, that the company's incentives will stay aligned with yours. That future, you won't mind paying whatever the exit fee turns out to be. Most of the time, that bet feels harmless. Until it isn't. This doesn't mean paid software is automatically virtuous. Plenty of expensive tools are bloated, manipulative, or fragile. But paying upfront does one important thing. It forces the cost into the present, where you can see it, question it, and compare it. Free postpones that moment, and postponed costs have a habit of compounding. There's also a deeper implication here. Beyond individual choices, when entire industries run on free platforms, control concentrates. Standards become de facto rules. Innovation starts orbiting a few gatekeepers. Instead of competing openly, the software you didn't pay for ends up shaping markets, culture, even behavior, without ever asking for permission. That's the quiet power of free. It enters without resistance. It leaves without obligation. So the next time you see a tool, proudly advertising $0, the most useful question isn't what can this do for me? It's what does this need from me to survive? Time, data, dependence, influence, or patience until the bill arrives. Because free software isn't cheap. It's just financed differently. And the final question isn't whether free is worth it. It's whether you're comfortable with the version of the price you'll eventually be asked to pay.